This is one of the most heartbreaking stories in NBA history. And I'm not talking about a missed shot. I'm not talking about an injury. I'm talking about something way worse. A dynasty, potential dynasty, that got killed by a spreadsheet. 3 future MVPs, all under 25, fresh off a finals appearance. The perfect blend of talent, chemistry, and hunger. Everything lined up for a decade of dominance. And then 4 months later it was over. Not because they weren't good enough, not because they couldn't win together, but because someone in a suit decided $5.5 million was too much to keep a dynasty alive. This is the story of the 2012 Oklahoma City Thunder, the greatest what if in modern basketball history. Let's rewind to December 2011. The NBA just survived a 161-day lockout that nearly killed the entire season. Players and owners finally shook hands, but now they had to squeeze 66 games into what should have been 82. Think about that for a second. Every other night for 4 months straight, no rest, no rhythm, pure chaos. While veteran teams were complaining about the schedule, there was one franchise perfectly built for this madness. Kevin Durant is 23, Russell Westbrook is 23, James Harden is 22, Serge Ibaka is 22. The average age of their core, 22 and a half years old. They went 47-19 in that compressed season. Do the math. That is a 58-win pace over a full season from a team that was supposed to be getting playoff experience. But here's what made them special. It wasn't just talent. Every team has talent. It was the timing. They were young enough to think they were invincible, athletic enough to actually be invincible, and hungry enough to prove it every single night. Durant won his 3rd straight scoring title, averaging 28 points per game. Westbrook was becoming the explosive weapon we know today. 23.6 points, 5.5 assists, and Harden, he was the best sixth man in basketball at 16.8 points per game. But the real magic wasn't in the individual numbers, it was the chemistry. These weren't 3 superstars forced together by free agency. They were brothers who grew up in the league together, learning each other's games like musicians in a band. The Thunder's playoff run reads like a revenge fantasy. First up, the defending champion Dallas Mavericks. Remember, this was the same Dallas team that had just beaten LeBron for the championship, the team with Dirk Nowitzki in his prime, championship DNA, playoff experience, everything the Thunder supposedly lacked. They swept them, not beat them, obliterate them. 4 straight games. Game 1, 99-98, Game 2, 102-99, Game 3, 95-79, Game 4, 103-97, each win more convincing than the last. By Game 4, Dirk was walking off the court knowing his championship window had just been slammed shut by a bunch of kids. Next up, Kobe's Lakers, because apparently sweeping defending champs wasn't enough a statement. The Lakers were supposed to teach these young players about playoff basketball, about winning when it matters, about championship mentality. Instead, the Thunder taught them about retirement planning. 119-90 in a playoff game against Kobe Bryant. Let me repeat that. They beat the Lakers by 29 points in a playoff game. Westbrook dropped 27 and 9 assists. Durant was smooth and deadly. This wasn't competitive basketball, this was a generational announcement. Thunder in 5, Kobe's last real championship run was done and most people didn't even realize it yet. But the real test was waiting in the conference finals. The San Antonio Spurs, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Greg Popovich, a 20-game winning streak. Everything the Thunder weren't: methodical, experienced, championship tested. This was David versus Goliath, except David was going up against the most perfectly constructed basketball machine in recent memory. The Spurs took the first two at home, 109-98, 121-11. The Thunder looked overwhelmed, young, like they'd finally met their match. The experts started talking, too young, too inexperienced, good learning experience. All the usual stuff you hear when young teams run into championship teams. Then something beautiful happened. Game 3, 102-82 at home. Game 4, 109-103. Game 5, 108-103. Back in San Antonio. Game 6, 107-99 to close it out. They came back from 2-0 down against the Spurs, against Pop, against playoff perfection. At 23 years old, they just taught the most experienced team in basketball a lesson about heart. Western Conference champions, first finals since 1996 when they were still in Seattle. Kids were going to the promised land. Miami Heat versus Oklahoma City Thunder. LeBron James, Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh, the super team that broke basketball in 2010, against three kids from Oklahoma who drafted their way to the greatness. Here's the part that still gives me chills. Las Vegas made the Thunder favorites. Read that again. A team with three players under 25 in their first finals ever were betting favorites over LeBron James and the Miami Heat. That is how inevitable this felt. That is how perfect this setup was. The contrast was perfect. Miami with the glitz and glamour and the manufactured super team, the pressure to deliver. Oklahoma City with the blue-collar fans, the organic chemistry, the house money mentality. Game 1, Thunder 105, Heat 94. Durant exploded for 36 points. Westbrook controlled the game with 27 and 11 assists. The Heat looked tired, slow, like they were playing underwater while the Thunder were flying. LeBron scored 30 but vanished in the fourth quarter. Remember, this was 2011 LeBron, the version that melted down against Dallas, the one who hadn't figured out how to close yet. The crowd in Oklahoma City was electric, not manufactured energy, pure organic passion. These fans had waited their entire lives for this moment. Game 2 changed everything. Heat win 196, but the ending still haunts Thunder fans. With 37 seconds left, Durant rose up for what could have been a game-tying shot. Many believed LeBron fouled him. The refs saw nothing. Series tied 1-1, but the momentum had shifted to Miami. Games 3 and 4 in Miami. This was where championship experience was supposed to matter, where the bright lights and pressure would overwhelm the young Thunder. Game 3, Heat 91-85, a gritty defensive battle that Miami controlled from start to finish. But Game 4 was different. Game 4 was special. Russell Westbrook scored 43 points. 43 points in an NBA Finals game. 20 of 32 from the field, living in the paint, making impossible shots, absolutely refusing to let his team to lose. He was a man possessed. Every drive to the basket felt like destiny. Every pull-up jumper looked automatic. This was prime Westbrook at his most unstoppable. And then basketball gods started writing the script themselves. LeBron James cramped up, the king, the chosen one, hobbling off the court in the fourth quarter of a finals game with his championship dreams on the line. This was it. This was the sliding doors moment. The Thunder's window was opening. But that is why LeBron became LeBron, and he came back on one leg and hit the dagger three-pointer that essentially ended Oklahoma City's season. And then in a moment that perfectly captured their youth and inexperience, Westbrook fouled Mario Chalmers with 15 seconds left, a mental error that sealed their fate. For the 3 points, a legendary all-time great finals performance, and it didn't matter. Sometimes being great isn't enough. Sometimes experience beats talent. Sometimes one mistake erases for the 3 points of brilliance. Game 5, Heat 121, Thunder 106. It was over. LeBron finally got his ring. The super team experiment worked. But here's what everyone missed in that moment. This wasn't supposed to be the end. This was supposed to be beginning. KD was 23, Westbrook was 23, Harden was 22, Ibaka was 22. They had just taken the best team in basketball to 5 games in their first finals. Next year they'd be better, more experienced, hungrier. They'd be back obviously, right? October 27, 2012. 4 months and 5 days later after Game 5, James Harden was traded to Houston. The Thunder sent James Harden, Daquan Cook, Cole Aldrich, and Lazar Hayward to Houston for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and 2 first-round draft picks and a second-rounder. Reason? $5.5 million. Harden wanted a 4-year, $60 million extension. The Thunder offered 4 years, $55.5 million. $5.5 million over 4 years for a franchise that will be worth billions. That is $1.375 million per year, less than what some teams spend on halftime entertainment. James Harden became the 2018 MVP, a perennial All-Star, one of the greatest offensive players in NBA history, a future Hall of Famer. The Thunder got Kevin Martin for 1 decent season and Jeremy Lamb, who was, well, Jeremy Lamb. They did get Steven Adams with one of those picks, which turned out great, but Steven Adams for James Harden? That is like trading a Lamborghini for a reliable Honda and celebrating the gas mileage. What happened next reads like a Greek tragedy. 2013, Westbrook gets hurt in the playoffs. Second round exit to Memphis. 2014, they make the Western Finals but lose to San Antonio again. 2015, Durant gets hurt, they miss the playoffs entirely. 2016, they blow a 3-1 lead to Golden State. Durant leaves that summer. Kevin Durant joined the 7-3 win Golden State Warriors, the same Warriors they just blown a 3-1 lead to. Durant won back-to-back championships in Golden State, the exact championships he was supposed to win with Oklahoma City. Westbrook became a triple-double machine, won MVP in 2017, put up video game numbers, but he never got past the first round without Durant. Think about that alternate timeline for a second. Durant, Westbrook, and Harden entering their primes together, Ibaka as the perfect defensive anchor, all the role players they could have added around that core. How many championships? 3, 4, 5? We will never know because someone in an Oklahoma City boardroom decided saving $5 million was more important than basketball immortality. Here's the part that makes it even worse. The Thunder weren't some struggling franchise that couldn't afford the luxury tax. In 2012, the franchise was valued at $348 million. Today, try $2.8 billion. They could have paid Harden's entire contract with the revenue from one playoff run. The merchandise sales from keeping that trio together would have made the luxury tax look like a pocket change. Meanwhile, teams like Lakers and Warriors were spending whatever it took to win championships. The Warriors paid over $40 million in luxury taxes in 2019 alone. This wasn't about money. It was about priorities, about thinking like a small market when you had big market talent. We live in an era where players form super teams and chase championships wherever they want. The Thunder had the opposite, a homegrown dynasty that could have ruled the entire decade. Instead, they chose the pinch pennies while their championship window slammed shut. The Harden trade didn't just hurt the Thunder, it changed the entire NBA landscape. Harden turned Houston into a perennial contender. They came within 1 game of beating the Warriors in 2018. That could have been Oklahoma City's championship. Durant's decision to Golden State was directly influenced by his frustration with the Thunder's inability to build adequate supporting casts. They chose cost-cutting over championship building, and he chose a different path to glory. The Thunder's failure to keep their core together became a cautionary tale for every other franchise. You either pay to keep greatness or watch it walk away. The Thunder rebuilt again and again. They're back in the finals now in 2025, but with a completely different team. After trading away multiple All-Stars and starting over from scratch, 13 years later, 13 years to get back to where they were when they were 23 years old. The 2012 Oklahoma City Thunder represent everything beautiful and brutal about professional sports. They were talented enough to win multiple championships, young enough to sustain a decade of excellence, chemistry rich enough to become basketball legends, and they were destroyed by an accountant. Look at what that core achieved separately. Durant won 2 championships and multiple finals MVPs. Westbrook won an MVP and revolutionized the point guard position. Harden won an MVP and became one of the greatest offensive players ever. All of that individual brilliance, all of those accolades, all of that success, it should have happened together. It should have happened in Oklahoma City. Instead, we are left with the greatest what if in modern basketball, not because of injuries, not because of bad luck, not because of better competition, because of $5.5 million. Championship windows don't just close naturally. Sometimes they get slammed shut by people who don't understand that some things are more valuable than money. Sometimes the most painful question in sports isn't what if he made that shot or what if he stayed healthy. Sometimes it is what if they had just paid the man.